students, I'm Mr. Leung. In this video, I would like to talk about homeostasis, the balance in our body. And the focus will be the negative feedback mechanism, which is very important for the topics in human physiology. You need to recall the concept of coordination in our human body, involving the receptors, coordinating centers, and effectors. Meanwhile, you need to appreciate the complexity of the amazing homeostasis in the human body. And also the feedback loops in our body are interconnected to form a complex system. In this video, I shall remind you the 3 golden steps for doing revisions or questions about negative feedback. Then, I hope you can understand how balance works in the Star Wars. So you may never imagine that the whole story of Star Wars is talking about balance in the galaxy. So before we start, I need to remind you about the study skills. Firstly, there must be something we really need to prepare. These are the common languages and the terminologies in biology. Secondly, when facing different topics, we have a way to think logically. So the key questions leads us to join all the dots together. Last but not least, we can construct the knowledge finally. In this video about homeostasis and negative feedback, of course we have to recall the definition of homeostasis. There are 3 main key points in the definition. So first is to keep the the homeostasis is an ability of the living organism to keep the internal environment relatively constant, first and second point, despite the change in the external environment. So actually remember these 3 key points to construct the complete definition of the homeostasis. So one thing I would like to remind is about the internal environment and the external environment. The first level is that the internal environment represents inside the body, and the external environment represents outside the body. For example, our body temperature is internal, and the room temperature outside the body is external. And the second level is that the internal environment represents inside the cell, and the external environment represents outside the cells. For example, the water potential of the cytoplasm in the cell is the internal environment, and the water potential of the tissue fluid, the blood, and the plasma is the external environment. So no matter what, our ultimate goal is to maintain a relatively stable environment. Therefore, here I would like to recall the significance of homeostasis. For example, maintaining relatively constant body temperature for the enzymes to work in our body. So remember, actually the homeostasis is a way to provide a suitable condition for the cells to work. And of course, it can also provide organism with a certain degree of independency from the environment. As an animal, being independent is very important. We can stay active even the external temperature is so low. So that's why we can find food or escape from the predators. Of course, the disadvantage is to lose a lot of heat, but at least you know that for the homeotherms, we have a ability to maintain our body temperature relatively constant. So that's the ability of homeostasis. Then we have the definition of negative feedback mechanism. Just like the homeostasis, there are also 3 key points in the definition to construct a complete definition. Any change of a factor, first key point, away from the normal level, maybe higher or maybe lower. So this change will initiate the second key point. It will initiate a corrective response that return it to the normal level. That's the third key point. So that means you will see that higher than the normal level, so we can restore to the normal level, or lower, we can make it or return it to the normal level. So that's the negative feedback. And you can see the diagram. It shows how the negative feedback mechanism works. One thing I would like to remind is that the concept of going back or returning to the normal level and relatively constant mentioned in the homeostasis. Why do we say that it should be relatively constant but not constant? Okay, so our body is not that smart to restore the normal level as the straight line shown here. So actually it is an ups and downs curve. Okay, so therefore when talking about hormone secretion, when talking about homeostasis, when talking about negative feedback, we are talking about more or less hormone is secreted rather than yes or no. Okay, so in this slide, it is a very typical feedback mechanism I put in the notes always. So it's just for you, for your reference, that negative feedback mechanism brings you back to the normal level by increasing or decreasing the certain factor level. So remember, more or less. So after talking about the terminologies, we talk about the observation of how can we control the blood glucose level by hormones. I modified a question from Hong Kong A level to demonstrate the scientific investigation about the blood glucose regulation. This table shows the change of the blood glucose concentration and the hormones A and B before, during, and after a carbohydrate-rich meal. One special thing I would like to remind is about the unit. When doing the question, which asks you to plot a graph from the table, you have to be careful about the XY axis and the unit as well. Also, the unit really affects the values of the numbers shown. Okay, so you can see that even for hormones A and B, the number are 100 something, okay, or 80 something, 70 something, but of course the unit, they are absolutely different. Okay, so actually it refers or it reflects, okay, different level of those hormones. But of course you can refer to the figures first, at least take a look at the figures. Okay, so for the figures, you must be able to find the increase of the blood glucose level, then it drops to normal level. Meanwhile, the concentration of the hormone A and hormone B also change, but the pattern is different. Okay, so the hormone A, it increases and then decreases, and for hormone B, it decreases and then it increases. Okay, so at least for the table, you need to be able to know the difference. Okay, so for this question, actually is asking you to plot the graph and identify hormones A and B by the change pattern. Firstly, let's talk about the hormone A. So the level of hormone A increases as the level of glucose in the blood increases. Okay, so at least you need to take a look at the blue curve, the glucose, and also the red curve, okay, hormone A. And then for hormone B, the green curve, okay, and the blue curve, okay, we analyze them together. So the level of hormone B decreases as the level of the glucose in the blood increases. Okay, so at least you know that from this part, okay, after such investigation, we construct the basic idea about the insulin and the glucagon. These two hormones are related to the blood glucose level regulation in human body. So after talking about the definitions and observation, it's time to think in a logical way. But before that, okay, I would like to talk about the general effect of the insulin and the glucagon first. So for this slide, what I want to remind you is that for the whole table, you may think, oh, I need to memorize all the things we learn. Yes, you need to memorize all of them, okay, but it's just the first level. But if you would like to develop the high order thinking, so actually the most important thing, that's the this column. Okay, the column, it shows the criteria of comparison, okay, of comparing the insulin and the glucagon. Okay, where are they secreted, okay, or when will they be secreted, or what will be the target organs of those hormones, okay, and actually the biological actions of those hormones. So actually that's a very common concept for us to compare different ideas. For example, when we need to talk about the red blood cell and the white blood cell, we need to compare different types of blood cells. So where are they produced, what are the functions, okay, any cellular structure differences, okay, and what is the reason behind that, okay. So that's something you need to know first. Or of course, okay, if you are asked to compare the antibodies or the antibiotics, something like this, so you need to know that which type of cell or which type of organism can produce antibody or antibiotics, actually what are they acting against, okay, and what is the composition of antibodies or the antibiotics, something like this. That's the criteria you need to be able to set up to compare what the question it asks you to compare, okay. So remember that for the whole table, of course, for the first level is that you need to be able to recall the concept, but the higher level is that you need to set those criteria for yourself to compare these two types of hormones, cells, okay, or any other chemicals. So one more thing I would to talk about in this table is the biological actions of insulin and glucagon. So you can see that there are different colors: red, green, and blue. So red, they are in one pair; green, they are in one pair; and blue, they are in the third pair. So at least for the insulin, okay, and the glucagon, the concept is just like that. When you talk about, or when we talk about the blood glucose level, you can use the money as the metaphor, okay. So if you have a lot of money, okay, just higher than normal level, you have a lot of them, so how can you make sure that, okay, the glucose or the money will not be lost, okay. So at least the basic idea is that enhance the glucose uptake by the body cells, so put the money in the bank, okay. So ask the body cells to uptake all the money, right, and then promote the conversion of glucose to glycogen in liver and muscle. So at least, okay, that's the conversion, okay, for storage, right, okay. So actually for this part, it's just the opposite idea, okay. So for the glucagon, okay, so you do not have money in your wallet, okay, at this moment. So what you are going to do, go to the bank, okay, go to the bank and withdraw the money, right, okay. So for the insulin, deposit, and for the glucagon, withdraw, right, okay. So promote the release of the glucose, okay, in the blood of the into the blood from the liver. But where do the glucose come from? So enhance the breakdown of the glycogen into glucose in the liver. So at least go to the bank and withdraw the money, okay. So many students, they overlook this green point, okay. They just mention that the glucagon enhances the breakdown of glycogen to glucose in the liver, but ignore this concept. Please release the glucose in the blood, otherwise how can you return the blood glucose level to normal level, right, okay. So for this part, okay, for insulin, okay, after saving all the money and you still have a lot of money, use them, consume them, okay, increase the oxidation of glucose, okay, respiration in cells, use them, okay. And for the glucagon, okay, so no more Hong Kong dollars, okay, in your bank account. So promotes the conversion of other nutrients into glucose in the liver. For example, you have other money, okay, you have some money from other countries, okay, US dollar, renminbi, something like this, okay, convert the US dollar to Hong Kong dollar, okay. So promotes the conversion of other nutrients into glucose in the liver. So at least you have a general ideas of the effects of insulin and glucagon. After talking about the definition and observation, it's time to think in a logical way. Therefore, we have the guiding questions. When facing the questions about negative feedback mechanism, we can think in this way by going through these 3 steps. So the first step is that what is the change of the certain factor? For example, the blood glucose level concentration, the body temperature, the water potential of the body fluid. Second is that what is your ultimate goal? Of course, it's talking about negative feedback, so the corrective response must be related to increasing or decreasing the certain factors to normal level. And thirdly, Last but not least, we need to recall the mechanisms involved. What do the receptors, effectors do during the negative feedback mechanism? For example, any hormone secrete or any metabolic activities is promote or inhibit. So let's take an example to demonstrate the 3 steps. After plotting the graph, the question asks you to indicate the relationship between the increase in blood glucose level and the secretion of hormones A and B. And you have to talk about the site of secretion and the effect of the hormones. Firstly, the question has already told you that the increase in blood glucose level, therefore the blood glucose level is higher than the normal level. Secondly, our ultimate goal is to lower the blood glucose level to normal level to restore it. Thirdly, we have to talk about the mechanism involved. The question is so good because it reminds us to talk about the organs secreting the hormones and the major effect of the hormones on the target organs. So, in this slide, I focus on the mechanism involved. Pancreas is the organs to detect the change in the blood glucose level, and it will secrete more insulin and less glucagon. Remember the idea of more or less, but not yes or no. Therefore, if you only write the pancreas will secrete insulin and not secrete glucagon, is a wrong concept. It should be secrete more insulin or less glucagon. Then we need to mention one of the biological actions of insulin and glucagon. So you can refer the slide before, okay? So I hope you can understand the 3-step idea to deal with the questions about negative feedback mechanism. So after the example, it's time for you to practice. Here we have a question about 2 hormones again. In this question, you are given a graph to analyze. X-axis is the blood glucose level, and we have the double Y-axis for hormones A and B. In the question, it asks about which hormone will play an active role in blood glucose regulation when the blood glucose concentration drops to 40 mg per 100 ml. So of course, you need to read the graph clearly whether 40 milligram per 100 ml is higher or lower than the normal level. Then check the curve. Which hormone is secreted more under such low blood glucose level? Hormone A or hormone B? So that's something you need to prepare, okay, for this question. Okay, read the curve, okay, and which one is A and B, okay, and read the blood glucose level 40 milligram higher or lower, okay, and of course is lower, right? Okay, and I just would like to remind you that how are the 4 marks allocated. 1 mark for indicating which hormone plays the active role, first mark, and the second mark is about to name the hormone. Remember, the spelling must be correct, okay? 1 mark for the name. And 2 marks, the last 2 marks, for talking about the ultimate goal and the mechanism involved. So, you can try to do this question. I shall post the answer in the video description below. Although the whole video is talking about the negative feedback mechanism in homeostasis, it's very essential for you to master this concept. It's because the 3 steps in idea helps you to learn the concepts in elective 1, human physiology. The 3 steps idea is just like learning the basic technique of building the Lego blocks. After you learn this fundamental technique, you know how to apply this in other examples. So you can see from the picture, okay, building the the Lego blocks normally, okay, and then you can build a city or even build a model, okay. So in elective 1, there are just more organs for you to learn first, okay. Then what you need to do is put those new Lego blocks together to construct your own knowledge. For example, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Then we have the kidney, the skin, and the heart and lungs, and the ovary, something like this. Okay, so actually for the osmoregulation, thermoregulation, gas content in blood regulation, and also the menstrual cycle, what you need to do is to put all the Lego blocks together, or just like what I said before, joining all the dots together to form what we so-called the knowledge web. Because you have already learned all the topics before. You learned circulatory system, you learned respiratory system, you learned reproductive system and menstrual cycle already. So it's time to connect all the dots, okay, in the past. Before the video ends, I would like to say something for 2019. 2018 is coming to the end. Any plans, tasks you would like to accomplish and you have already accomplished them, okay? 2019 is a new chance for you to own your life. Grab every chance you have, execute every plan you have, expand your social circle, broaden your horizon in this year. And the advice I would like to give you is to read more. Reading can really open your mind and it really helps you to construct your knowledge web. So I wish you all have an exciting and fruitful 2019. Happy New Year. Bye bye.